Hello, book lovers. Welcome back to Bookmarked, which is our title for our book club series hosted by myself, Phil Svitek, and the lovely Marisa Serafini. We are two friends that just love all fiction, reading, and as friends, we like talking about these books that we get to read. So we decided a while ago at this point that each and every month we would select a book, talk about the book, but instead of just talking about it in like our apartments, we figured we'd get to share it with you, right? So this month's edition, this is June 2025, The Reckoning of Roku, which is in the series of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So we're going to talk about this book at length. We're going to get into spoilers, the context of it, who the author is, and things of that nature. Talk about the various themes, and then we'll round things out with, what we've been reading extracurricularly, and also give you our syllabus, if you will, moving forward. So, without further ado, though, as we always like to do, Marisa, your overall thoughts on this wonderful book.
Hello, Phil. I love Avatar verse. I love Last Airbender. I love Legend of Korra. I mean, represent. She's my girl. She's my girl. I've met like half of the cast. They're amazing. I was very very excited when you picked this one. It's number 5 in this series. Admittedly, I have all the books, but because I'm just so ADD, I haven't read all of them. You think I would, but I got a million books on my TBR. But I did read this one. I appreciated it. I loved how it does. It's a nice, clean lead up to what we know of the first series of The Last Airbender and leading up to Aang and his gang, because we know Roku was the previous avatar before Aang and like helped him come into his avatar journey. So it's nice to see like all the avatars and the different flaws and the different missions and struggles they've had to deal with when they're getting into their powers, when they're learning their political prowess and all that, and like just developing themselves as human beings, as characters, just in and of itself, without powers, and the people around them, their friends, their adversaries. I mean, it's really cool to just keep diving into this world that's been around for so long, and they just keep expanding it, and I love it, and we're nerds, and I love you even more for picking this book.
Amazing. Well, there's definitely a lot to discuss. Yes, we love the Avatar verse, which also includes Legend of Korra. You, among many others, are always very quick to point out that people tend to forget the Legend of Korra series. That is equally wonderful as, of course, the original. So let us not sleep on that. Also,
Yeah.
this doesn't have anything to do with the book, but we're making this obviously a little bit love fest for Avatar verse in general. I met a lot of the people that were part of the animation team for Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I went to Annecy in France, which has an animation market and festival, and serendipitously, I got introduced to a team that worked on Avatar: The Last Airbender. So that was a very very nice treat. So yeah, just to make everyone jealous, including Marisa.
Yeah, no, that's so freaking awesome. I'm like jealous, sure, but also I was like, you and we have different experiences within, just this world of like we're different professionals in our own right, and that's so awesome for you. Like, here's me, like, getting red, just being angry at you for meeting and not telling me. No, I'm really excited because that's awesome. I know like you're big into animation, just as the creative aspect of it. I'm big into like the performers and the actors. So like I've met a lot of the actors who have been this, and you and I used to run After Buzz TV, and we did cover Legend of Korra, the after show, when like it was kind of a little bit after the fact, but it was still around the time it just aired, so it was still kind of in the zeitgeist. And it's just, you and we were so busy back then that it was just unfortunately one of many shows that we covered and just kind of like got lost in the everything that we did. And looking back on it now and reflecting, I was like, gosh, I wish we would have spent more time on it. I wish we would have focused more, because like the people we got and the people we got to talk about too, it's like this is such a cool world. I wish we could have like really dedicated more time to really love it then. But hindsight's 2020, and I love that we're taking the time now to explore it even more with a more critical, I guess, eye, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it has the like what we love about it, and certainly we'll dive into this specifics of the book, but it's very philosophical, right? It's very nuanced, and for lack of a better thing, like when you made mention, like each avatar has their own sort of flaws. That's because they're human, and like let's not kid ourselves. It's analogous to the Dalai Lama, let's say, right? Like every time there's a
Oh
passing
yeah.
of the Dalai Lama, there's a new person that is like, oh, you're the reincarnation of Dalai Lama, right? So it's very analogous to that. The difference being that the Dalai Lama kind of is established as a more peaceful character. But
Yeah.
even as enlightened as they may be, obviously they have their own human flaws here and there, one could argue. So, that to me has always been the jumping off point. I love the East meets West sort of nature of it. And there's a simplicity, right? There's 5 nations and that's it. So, and not that they're, monoliths in of themselves, like not all airbenders are all alike, not our firebenders are all alike and all that stuff. So it's, the
Mhm.
world building is just phenomenal. So yes.
And I think it's cool. It's not like just the world building, it's just the universal themes that you take away from it. I was like, yeah, right now you could probably make an analogous to the Dalai Lama, like, just being growing up a nerd. Also, it's like I saw a lot as like Buffy the Vampire Slayer too. It's always like when one Slayer dies, the next one gets called upon, and like they're all different. They have all the people who help them through their journey, and within they have their own flaws, and it could be at any age, any time, and it's just learning about each, and you have to, and I think this is what people get on, like, unfortunately they have a hard time delineating, like, this person better than this person, this avatar was better than this person, this one's more powerful, yada yada yada. It's like, again, that becomes subjective and opinionated, and that's where like you get that really really tenuous divide. And I think it's just like, if you just look at them individually and just study them as characters and stuff, you can see what you like, what you take, and that doesn't make one person better or worse than the other. And I like we're taking the time to study Roku, because we know a little bit about him, some information, but like we're getting a little bit more about his background and just what kind of really led up to what we already know in the first series.
Yeah, and for the most part, it's a standalone book, right? So you haven't read the other ones, or at least before reading this one, I haven't read the others. So it's like, okay, how's this going to go? But at the end of the day, it's a standalone, and I appreciate that about these books. You can sort of dive in, or just this world in general. For the most part, you can kind of get acclimated into it. And yes, the lore does build upon itself, and as you made mention, you can compare this avatar to this avatar, whatever. But at the end of the day, you can kind of, for the most part, from my experience, jump in at any point and not feel too lost. So,
Yeah.
so I appreciate that about it.
Yeah, and I think that's good because it can cater to a lot of different generations, a lot of different voices, a lot of different ages. And I think it also really, you can pick and choose a book. I read this at a weird time. I wouldn't say weird, but like in like a time in my 30s where I could have read it. I mean, this book just came out in 2024, but to the other books that I've actually had on my shelf for a couple of years. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm a big reader. I have a million half books that I just haven't gotten to. But like, sometimes when you just read a book at a certain time in your life, you're like, oh, that totally makes sense. And these are the kind of books that are like, you can read them at any time in your life and it'll still be relevant.
Yeah. So let's start jumping into it. First off, this book is by Randy Ribay, and so he's a National Book Award finalist for Patron Saints of Nothing. Other works include After the Shot Drops, An Infinite Number of Parallel Universes. He has a BA in English from the University of Colorado. He also went to study language and literacy at Harvard. He grew up in the Midwest, but is from the Philippines. So
Stop
I figured,
it. Stop it.
I didn't pick this knowing it. I just like the Avatar
Thank you,
sort of
Phil.
book, but yes, obviously the fact that there's that connection for you, Marissa, is I thought would be pretty cool.
It's kind of,
Currently,
that really is.
yeah, and currently he lives in the Bay Area with his wife, son, and dog, and this is his first contribution to the Avatar universe, and the first series in these like chronicles, right? You may mention this is book number 5, so this is the first book not written by F.C. Yee. So I have no point of comparison. It doesn't seem like you do either. But as far as the writing style, we get various points of view. We're always third person narrator there, but we get pretty intimate with each of the characters as we sort of follow them. We'll talk about that. It apparently is less intricate than the previous books, so therefore more accessible, and has, we'll talk about the emotional clarity and the character insights. The tone and humor seem to be balanced along with tension and tragedy. And for the most part, it's 350 or so pages, but it's got a good pace to it, and it's not like a heavy 350 pages. It's like a pretty easy, breezy, light read.
Right. I'm like looking at it, I was like, oh, only 350? Gosh, we're such nerds. Because I read this really fast. I'm a fast reader, but I don't think I was ever lost. It wasn't like the college level, like, oh my god, I have to write a dissertation on this. It's not that kind of heaviness and convolution in it, which I appreciated. And the thing is, it's once we get into the story and we get to the location, and we'll get into it, but it's just like it seemed like a very linear story for the most part, like the main thing. So it was easy to follow along. You clearly understood what was happening.
Yeah, you wanna provide us with a summary? You can be as detailed or simplistic as you like.
Sure. Thank you for putting me on the spot here.
I can do it if you prefer, but I figured I'd give you a shot at it.
No, how about you do it? You
Sure.
pick this one. I'll let you lead this one.
So, how about this? Feel free to fill in the blanks. So, basically, we're there at the Serenation of Avatar Roku. He's from the Fire Nation, and the Crown Prince of the Fire Nation, Sozin, is his best friend, and it kind of, is the tearing apart of that friendship, right? Because even though they're going to be friends, Avatar Roku's heading off to the Air Temple, and Sozin's got his own things that he has to deal with in terms of responsibilities as a political leader. So there's that. Training happens and things like that, and Roku feels like things aren't moving fast enough. And then one day, he gets a message from his best friend, our Crown Prince, saying that, like, hey, there are earthbenders coming into Fire Nation territory, and it could spell disaster. Can you help out? Much at the chagrin of the leaders at the Air Temple, Roku decides he's going to help, right? And he does this alongside a young airbender who helps him. And they stumble, as you kind of noted a little bit earlier, they go to this forgotten island that's all foggy, and we'll learn about the fog. But long story short, essentially it's this like ancient tribe that has figured out that there's a sacred cave, and through the cave they can amplify their powers, if you will, and hence why they're able to create fog that masks the entire island. They've tried to protect their way of life. They essentially kill anyone that comes there, and Sozin, under lies, has sent Roku there to essentially get to the cave because Sozin wants this power. Later on, he learns that, in fact, the power is limited to the cave. Battles ensue, lots of bloodshed. People die, some good, some bad. And then we sort of end on this tenuous peace treaty, if you will, between Sozin and Roku. So it really, at the end of the day, as many characters as there are, really is a story about two friends kind of splintering off, if you will. Would you agree with that?
You can see the beginning and the end. First of all, that was beautifully done. Well done. And I think, yeah, now we're just done with this conversation. Done. No, I agree. That and that's the thing. And like, I loved how we, just go from one thing to the next to the next. We see like the struggles of war and struggles just like expansion and trying to gain power and all that, and but the all the unfortunate collateral damage that goes with the people you gain, the people you lose. And I think it's interesting to jump in this point of time in Sozin and Roku's friendship, because we know that they've already been friends for years. They're basically brothers at this point, but now they're at like that first time when they're like young adults making their own decisions. Like, oh, we have gone basically our entire lives together. We might start be splitting off by now. You can see the paths splitting in their different mentalities, motivations, why they do things. And you see where Sozin starts to lead to, because we know he becomes the big baddie of Last Avatar verse, Last Avatar Airbender, and so we know he goes into a very more malicious, evil ways about the world. And then we see Roku, who is the Avatar, go into his more philosophical, peaceful Avatar ways of just trying to like gain balance in the world. And so Sozin is the one who's imbalancing it. And I think it's really interesting to get to this point. This is like the start, the crack of where they're splitting off.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, right? Like they each have quite literally a role to fill. One is the avatar, and one is going to be the leader. And you try to make that work for you, right? Roku's trying to figure out, well, what does it mean to be an avatar? And same thing with Sozin. He's trying to figure out, well, what does it mean to lead the Fire Nation? And obviously, there's like this idea of like strength and making sure that the future is guaranteed, sort of a thing. And but how you go about that is open to interpretation. Obviously, Sozin is influenced by his father, who, for all accounts, isn't necessarily the nicest to begin with. But then Sozin wants his own version of himself because he doesn't want to be like his father, which kind of interestingly parallels Roku, because Roku goes off on his own at much the chagrin of sister Disha, right? So they're both circumventing authority, let's say, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you know what you have to do, but they're also, you got to remember, they're young guys. They're still coming into their ways. They're starting learning about themselves and their journey, and they're still at that point where they're questioning authority, questioning, do I have to do this? I should do this because it's the right thing to do, but like, do I really have to do this right now? Maybe I can just like skirt around this and shirk their responsibilities as of right now. Mostly because they're young, they don't want to deal with that, and I get that, but that is the growth, the character growth that they have to do as like to become the people that they are. They have to start actually dealing with these issues, and they're like, oh, now I got to be an adult now. Crap. basically that's what I just saw. I saw like young guys who are like, shoot, responsibilities, man.
Yes, indeed. Well, I want to put a pin on them because I think a lot of the other characters obviously influence and affect them. And so specifically, I wanted to jump in and talk about Malaya because not that she's like the third peg in this tripod, but she does carry a lot of that same sensibility. So she's one of the natives of this, secretive clan.
Maryland.
Unlike the others, she does not have any bending powers, but she is incredible in terms of her hunting skills, her scouting skills, like just, for lack of a better term, a woodsman, like you would imagine, right? Like just like an Aragon from Lord of the Rings. Yeah.
Yeah, so, resourceful. Just because you don't have powers and bending, and I think that's the great thing about this universe. It just shows, just because you don't have bending doesn't mean you're not useless. Asami is one of the best characters ever. Non-bender. Seriously, she saves that team multiple times. It was like you had Sokka, not a bender, and he's the one who comes up with all the genius plans to execute. So it's like they each have their ways to, still contribute to the missions, to the whatever they're doing. And I love Malaya. You know, me, woman power, woman empowerment. As someone who also trains in martial arts, I appreciate her resourcefulness. But I love the fact that, you know, like we get these two guys there, and it's nice to have a female in there to just balance out that testosterone. I mean, come on. You do need that maternal instinct to kind of just like calm down, you guys. Like, you're hot headed, you're hot headed. Let's think about this rationally. Let's, you know, bring in some peace and some maternal instincts. Let's slow this down a bit. Let's bring in she was like the voice of reason. She was conscious. She was like, she knew what was right and what was wrong. She knew killing people was wrong. She knew she had to do it for the protection. But it got to the point where, like, do I have to kill these people? Maybe I could just stop them. I could just stop them, turn them around. That doesn't mean I have to kill them. And so that's where she's getting all these questions like, am I going far beyond what I've signed up to? And that's where she's questioning everybody else's motivations. Like, what am I really doing here? Who am I really serving? Like, my boss is kind of crazy. We've dealt with that.
And that's the whole sort of notion, and why I think that she's like the other two, because she has a sense of right and wrong, but it's in direct contradiction to what the teachings are, right? Some that have been said, others that have been left unsaid, and then she's kind of learning the darker side of her history, right? And grappling with that in real time. And furthermore, she directly affects the outcome of stuff, right? Like, she is talk about a tragic character. Roku really, like, not as much as his young airbender friend, but Roku really got and made a connection with her, and then Sozin killed her. And that, I want to talk about that from your perspective of, that's an unsaid truth. And they kind of like, we get into the mindset of Roku that he probably knows Sozin might be lying, but I want to get just kind of your overall thoughts on the death and the ramifications.
I think that this was a big catalyst for the split in that bromance. And I think it also, I mean, you're a dude, it kind of goes against the bro code. Like, when your guy is liking a woman, like, you don't date her. And like, to kill this woman that Roku is maybe starting to get some feelings for, starting to show some interest. Hey, they might be teaming up and doing something maybe good. And then Sozin just like killing him. It's like, no, I don't like this. It just shows that Sozin's mentality of trying to take over is definitely more darker, definitely more malicious, and he took it to a level of death, and murder, which is, just not cool, obviously. And you don't do that to your best friend. You don't do that to your best friend / brother. And so there's like a level bro code that got, violated, and just like human to human that got violated.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, like, I don't know if Roku had a romantic interest for her. I think his boo was still Tom Ming.
It's a little bit.
Okay, fair. But I think the greater point, regardless of that, there was a lot of notion of like, when is it okay to kill? When is it not? And it's still a question that's kind of left open ended for a large part of it, because it's like, Malaya was trying to kill Sozin because she saw his mind working. So if Sozin like wasn't consumed by the power of the sacred cave, then Malaya wouldn't have had to think about killing him. But then Sozin knew that she was doing that. Therefore, he could argue that he was acting in self-defense, but he's ultimately the one who killed her and then lying about it. So there's a lot of layers to, and I say all that, so that there's this side of it. Then we have Ulo, the Earthbenders, and then more specifically, the Earthbending avatar Roku comes in contact with, who, later on is like very utilitarian, as he learns of like, as long as it justifies goodness, then it doesn't matter. And then, I know I'm throwing a lot of layers here, but then
right.
Sister Disha says like, that how much of it was started because of the utilitarian nature of everything. So there's a lot there, and I want to see, I guess, from your standpoint, when is it okay to kill? When is it not?
Right. And first of all, I don't think it's ever okay to kill. And that's hard for me to say that because I am self-defense. I've studied it for years, and I think it's like when you're willing and actually actively murdering someone, you consciously knowing that you're taking a life, and the reasoning behind it, sure, that's wrong. If it's in self-defense, I think it's a case-by-case basis. But it also just kind of questions. I know that was a loaded question, but it questions just how rogue this island was. It was like you and I reread The Beach book by Alex Garland last year, and it's kind of like the same mentality where, like, when you leave a group of people on their own and they have their own independence and their own like society, and they've just like learned how to be self-sufficient in their way. We kind of got that with this island. Like with Ulo, unfortunately, he kind of controlled everybody, but it just showed he had power for so long, and his philosophies and mentalities were getting a little too rogue, a little too twisted. And people got to the point where they're like blindly following him, which is not good. And that's where Malaya was questioning. I was like, oh, who have I been serving this entire time? Yeah, I was like, it's great we have our independence. We're doing our own thing, but what we're doing to keep that independence is not good. And that goes into the whole theme of what when you add violence to something, is that okay? And here we're in the state of verge of World War III, and us millennials are just like, what? And we're seeing violence everywhere. But there's actually a great line, and I promise this will make sense, from Arcane. There's like, when is peace the justification for violence? When does the end, if at the end is the result of everything, like whatever, I think that's where we have to toe the line between, it's not black and white, it's gray. It's like, why do you do it, when do you do it? And oh man, it's very hard. But honestly, murder is just bad. Come on, people.
Well,
Murder is just bad.
well, I'm going to jump in because your favorite topic, colonizing.
Oh my god.
If people didn't go to the island and didn't try to mess with the clan, then there would be no need for killing, right? So it becomes that sort of chicken and the egg syndrome of like what starts what, right? And I just had to laugh because we read so many books on colonizing, and now
Much to my chagrin.
I'm just convinced this is human history can be summarized by colonizing. So anyway,
Unfortunately, it really, really, really can. But I think it also so just like we just know that this universe, the Fire Nation has been trying to take over. This
yeah,
is the start of like their power trip at the beginning of their 100-year war. Like it hasn't really started, but you can see they're like, oh, something's coming. This comment's coming. We can use this power extra boost to get ahead of everyone. This is like where it all begins, and that's the scary part. And that's where you're seeing the split between Avatar Roku and Sozin, because Sozin's getting his head's kind of getting filled with a little bit more hubris and like, yo, I'm powerful. You're the Avatar. You have like these natural powers, which I don't think you really earned. Even though I'm more powerful than you, I should rightfully. He kind of has this entitlement bit about him. It's like, I should have been the Avatar. I should have been the leader. And I think it's just him being, in the line of, other oppressors, his father, just like this line of fire lords and stuff. It's like he knows authority, he knows power, he knows what you have to do to get ahead in life, and it's unfortunately oppressing others to get a step up. And
yeah.
that's what the Fire Nation did.
Well, I want to read a passage from Taming, who is the love interest, and she was sent by Sozin to convince Roku to go do this. And they're having a discussion, right? And she says, maybe it's necessary to care deeply about your homeland so that you can empathize with how others feel about theirs. Once you fully understand that each is as valuable and as flawed as the others, that can motivate you to strive for peace and balance between four nations. She thought for a moment. Maybe it's less about being a spirit of no nation and more about being a spirit of all nations, which I thought was interesting. But then, not too far down the line, Sister Disha, she says, so Roku is arguing it's not war, it's a diplomatic mission. It's persuading them to leave an island that doesn't belong to them before things get worse. Sister Disha shook her head with disappointment. Like the air, the land belongs to no one. It's not the Avatar's responsibility to enforce illusionary boundaries. Ooh, I was like,
man.
I mean, so much philosophical debate. I was like, who is right?
Much.
They both make great points,
And it's kind of just like we see it. It's like, if you can't have that land, if I can't have that land, you can't have that land. And like, I'd be better off knowing no one was on the land and be all hunky-dory. And that's just like, who are you to say that this person or like these people can inhabit this place and you can't, just because like the history says maybe like you're on the boundaries of this nation or whatever. Just like, who are they hurting? They're literally all like independent. They're just like living their own lives until it's the external force that comes in and like disrupts their peace. And that's where you're like frustrated. It's like, but like, who are you to go in and say that you can't be here? You're the ones who are intruding on them.
Yeah,
that's not cool.
There's multiple layers to this, and I could open up a can of real life examples, but I'm not ready to come back from that, so we'll just stick to the Avatar universe. Speaking of, we've kind of hinted at Roku's chaotic airbender companion. How do you pronounce his name? Because I've never heard it said. Gyatso. I kept there's an Italian soccer player named Gattuso, so I in my mind named him Gattuso, even though I knew I was completely wrong about how to pronounce his name.
Well, Monk Gyatso is, Gyatso, Tenzin Gyatso is actually like the name of the Dalai Lama, or like one of the versions of the Dalai Lama. So like, that's why they split up the names. So like, you had Gyatso as his own character, and you had Tenzin as his own character, who is Aang's son. But that was the, Brian and Mike, the creators of Avatarverse, that was their ode to that culture and to honor that character. So it is Gyatso. The cool thing is to see a young Gyatso, because we know every time we see Gyatso during Legend of, oh my gosh, all these shows, during Avatar, the Last Airbender, like it's when Aang is a kid and he's studying and he's under the tutelage of Gyatso. He's already in that adult stage and philosophical monk-like airbending acolyte life, and to see a young Gyatso, it's like, all right, he used to be a kid at one point. I'm like, it's like, all right. To see him kind of flawed and to see him grow into his ways and his journeys into the character that we already know, that's pretty cool. Like, I like when you like reset the clock a little bit, like, let's go back to the beginning. Who were you back then? And it's nice to see that, because we enter the Last Airbender in a world of turmoil. Like, we're already in the middle of the war, but to go back to a time where everyone was actually peaceful and like genuine friends with each other. It's like you have the Air Nation being friends with the Fire Nation. You have Earthbenders being friends with everybody else. It's like these people are actually coexisting right now. This is a time of peace, and this is before the storm, literally. And it's cool to see this relationship at such a younger age.
Yeah, and I appreciate you bringing that up. It's one of those things that sometimes I forget the lore, but I also will point to that's what I appreciate. Like, it is a standalone, like, it works on its own, right? And then once you have the filling out of the history, it furthers it. To that point about there being peace, Roku does kind of have in his like last moments with Sozin, at least in this book, they talk about the notion of like, yes, there's peace, but what are all the nations really doing? What are they secretly building in terms of their weaponry and so forth? So that and that speaks directly what you're talking about. Of there's peace, not going to be peace for that much longer. Um,
Right.
so, but
But they're like everyone's conspiring. They're all like having their own secret plans to do something.
exactly. But staying in the moment, the connection, the biggest connection between Roku and Gyatso is the shared loss of a sibling. So I'd love to get into that, from your perspective and, what you thought and all that jazz.
I think that was a nice character growth and to really connect them. I think you and I would understand the best is like just trauma bonding when they have something so deep and emotional that they understand each other, like the sense of loss, the sense of powerlessness that like they tried to do something yet they failed. And I think that's where they found comfort in each other. Like, hey, we did the best we can. We're only human. Let's just stick to each other and like let's stick together, and we'll get through life. And I think that was the start of their brotherhood. That combined trauma bonding of loss and grief.
Yeah, and it was a very like it felt like a good start to their relationship, but I do appreciate how it tackles grief in general because in order to unlock his airbending again, you know, he had to not forget, but he had to openly talk about his sister, which he tried to repress, right? And so by being more open about it, it honors his sister, it keeps her memory alive, and it not absolves him of the guilt, but allows him to have a nuanced perspective of it. Because I think that's also a shared component to all this is, uh, you know, Yasu and Roku, they snuck out at night and did something very selfish, right? So that's kind of what led to this.
Right.
With Yama, she was on an airbender mission doing good out in the world. However, Gyatso was back at the temple because he was selfishly trying to better himself in
Mm-hmm.
terms of his skills. So there's this like selfish component that like quote unquote caused the deaths of their siblings, if you will.
Right. It's like, had we not been so selfish and self involved, had we been more compassionate and thought about others, they might still be alive. And I think that's where they're like, oh, we need to be just better people. It's like, because look what happened when we don't think about each other. Someone else gets hurt, someone else dies. And I think the and I love that's what's it's so real with this just the avatar verse in itself. And it's like you see a lot of those themes in Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender, where when we see, for example, when Aang has to fully become the avatar and get all of his quote unquote powers and unleash all of his chakras, he has to let go of the people he loves. He had to let go of Katara, and he had such a hard time. But once he learned to let go, he learned to embrace something else. And that was the same thing with, Korra. When she had to learn to let go of things, she had to become and like learn, or like when she went through like suffering and stuff, she learned how to be more compassionate towards others. It's like you have to let things go to let other things come in, become a more full self. And that was kind of that's what I saw with just speaking. And I think that's why we all love therapy. um, Come on, you guys, we're millennials. I was like, well, you and I are. But I think that is the healing part of philosophies, or like of Therapy is when you actually talk about it, you're letting it go. You're not internalizing it anymore. You're getting it out, and then that's where the healing begins. That's where you can start moving forward. And I think that's where Gyatso was coming from. It's like, oh, I kept this a secret. I've been ashamed of it for so long. Let me talk about it. Let see the errors of my ways. Now I can move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and yeah, it is very therapeutic in that way to talk. That's why they say like speak, talking to someone is healing. Just as a quick tip, at the top of this year, I saw from Simon Sinek this notion that like, hey, if a friend's going through something hard, like text someone like, hey, do you have 8 minutes? And 8 minutes is like code for, hey, I'm going through something really hard. I need someone to talk to. So it's less just like, hey, are you free to talk, which might be misconstrued of just an everyday text. And that 8 minutes, even though it literally might not solve anything, but just by getting it off that person's chest, just relaxes them to, if nothing else, right? And
It can
so
save
I
a life.
implemented it. Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's something that I implemented for all my friends. Um, a few people have taken advantage. I've taken advantage. So utilize it with your
Yeah.
friends of like the coded. Hey, do you have 8 minutes to talk? Right? And the good news about it is we all have 8 minutes. Like we say we don't, but
Yeah.
8 minutes really, no matter what you're doing, it's like okay, I can spare 8 minutes.
Yeah,
So
and I think that's what like makes you and I such great friends. Is I think we've both done that to each other. We have gotten to
yes,
the point in our friendship where we're like, "Yo, I'm not having a great day. This is happening. Call me back." And I love that about us because you and I have been through so much ish, and to get to that point where I know if you're struggling, if you know where I'm struggling, 8 minutes can save someone's life. It really can. It can change someone from thinking about suicide, committing suicide, attempting suicide, or like anything. It's just like just make the time to talk and connect to people, and you'll have a better time moving forward in life.
yes, indeed. And speaking of communication, I think that's a good way to jump back in. Like as honest as Sozin really did try to be with Roku in that last scene that we get with them together, not necessarily the last scene of the book, but the last scene of them together, there was still much that was unsaid, right? And even when you think back to how we opened up, they didn't share with each other things, right? And go tying it back to the siblings and so forth. I don't think they've never seemingly had a conversation about that loss of Yazoo, which was a big loss, obviously to Roku, but Sozin as well. And so the fact, like when we talk about the splintering of that friendship, well, of course it's splintered because they never had that means of communication like Roku did with his Airbender friend. So I don't know. I just came up with that now.
No, that's a great connection, and I think that is the importance of talking to someone, like utilizing friendships. Because like if you just sit down, and I say this so many conversations, Phil. I mean, go back to all of our shows. Like if we just took the time to talk to people, we would live in such a better world. We would coexist so much easier. I say it time and time again, and it's so true. Just talk to someone. Just talk to someone.
Yeah. Well, let me as we sort of like because we've been circling the idea of war, you've shared sort of your thoughts. Let me see if I'm not necessarily trying to get you on board. I don't even know I'm on board with this notion, but I did think about kind of its logical conclusion, right?
Okay.
In multiple ways. So this idea that like, okay, let's say I want to be peaceful, but someone starts attacking me and blah blah, then it's like self-defense. Well, I gotta kill them, right? Well, I've always loved the Gandhi quote, be the change you wish to see in the world. So
See the
if you
world.
want peace in the world, be peaceful. Well, by that extension, it's like, so I'm just supposed to let someone fight me? I think you can be defensive, like literally like no striking or whatever. And yes, this is where it gets like really cuckoo, but just go with me on this, if you will.
Okay.
Okay. If I am that detached from things, and I am that enlightened. And if someone really seems to have this sense, like, you want to kill me, I don't want to bring war, violence into the world, then I'll be that, quote, sacrificial thing. Now, okay, where does this get us to in terms of stuff, right? So then all the peace lovers out in the world get killed, and then all the warmongers start killing each other, blah, 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 until what? You're left with one? And I say all this because, A, yes, it is crazy, but I also hope through its craziness to illustrate the literal absurdity of the logical extension of all this. So what? We're all just going to, all the fighting people. So if you want to get rid of all the peace-loving motherfuckers, apologies, and then what? Just fight each other? Then that's your logical conclusion, and have at it, because if I'm going to create any change, then you know what? I lay down my shield. So, curious to hear your thoughts on the absurdity I just laid down.
Whew, I can see where you were going with that. Yeah, and that's the fine line between like creating boundaries, I guess, saying when to say no and when to actually stop it at the point where you couldn't stop it. You actually still have the power. And that's unfortunate. You saw the people who like basically just rolled over and let them get. It's like, unfortunately, we had the entire genocide of the Air Nation. Like, they were peaceful warriors. They weren't fighters. They were the pacifists. And look what happened to them. They chose not to fight. Like, they had to defend themselves. There's a difference between fighting and defending. They had to fight for their lives, literally, mostly out of survival. And it wasn't just for it, it was just like fighting power. And it's like we lost an entire nation because they weren't fighters. So they just kind of were like, okay, yep, if it ends with us, then I guess it ends with us. It's like, if we can, the most power that we can do is stop it right here and now, I guess that's what we're gonna do. And unfortunately you saw that with them. And that's why you also gotta love the earthbenders. They like they really put up a fight for the Fire Nation. I was like, they're the ones who like still stood their ground. They had an entire city with walls upon walls. Like, you can't break into Ba Sing Se. It's like, I know you want to take over the world, but you're not going to take over us. Like, you saw the people fighting against the Fire Nation. You saw the results of those who didn't, those who tried, and those who are just like, yo, just stay away from me. And he like can't even get into the waterbenders. I mean, gotta love me, my waterbenders. I am a waterbender myself. And they fought for their own survival, and I think it helped geographically where they're located in the world. They're like kind of split off. They're like the Northern's here, the Southern's here, and they're fighting their own battles. It's like, you know what, if you just leave us alone, we'll leave everybody else alone. So it's like you see how the different mentalities of fighting against someone who's just trying to take over. And if you fight, hey, yeah, you have a better means of survival if you actually fight back.
Well, as we start to wrap it out, obviously there's a lot of stuff still left undiscussed that we can go on and on for hours, but sadly we're coming up on our time here. To quote a wonderful song, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Really nothing. Amazing. So, I don't think we can top that.
Yes, indeed. So, again, there's so much to discuss, both in terms of the book, the connections to everything. By all means, comment down below or hit us up on social media. We'd love to discuss further at Serafini TV for Marisa, at Phil Svitek for me. We love talking all these things. So by all means, continue the conversation. But now it is time to get into talking about what we've been reading, not as part of this. So Marisa, I'll let you kick us off.
Actually, I've been reading a lot. I think it's just the summertime, and I love reading. So I did read our book for next month, which will be House in the Cerulean Sea. So good. I absolutely loved it, and I think you'll enjoy it too. I loved it so much that literally the next day I went back to the library, got the second book. So I'm going to be reading Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is the sequel. And then I got another book from this same author, TJ Klune, The Extraordinaries, which is just another book series of his. I love the writing. I love the, just the community aspect. And there's a lot of, like, we'll get into in that conversation, just like racism, prejudice, discrimination. I mean, come on.
Oh boy,
It's just the
looking
world.
forward to it.
I know. It's just the world we're in.
Who
right
doesn't
now.
love good
But, like,
racism, prejudice, sexism?
I was so affected, and plus, it's Pride Month, and so like there's a nice like romance story in that. I was really just like, oh, that was a book that I was like, oh shoot, that was a great time. I read that, so I was really excited. And I had just went to. Sorry, I'm all over the place because I did read a lot. I just went to Washington D.C. for Pride, and I met a lot of authors, sapphic writers. Not gonna lie, and they're just great people. And so I bought a few books from them. I bought 4, and I read one already. It's called "Might as Well Be an Ocean." Really enjoyable, and that's a lesbian relationship, but I think I really related to the main character because she has a lot of back history and trauma, and she's very neurodivergent like me, and just like how and kind of like self-destructive, like, oh, this, how can someone love me if I've been doing this and this and this. It's just like that whole self-doubt and stuff. So a lot of good books to read, and then I also got the books that we're going to be reading in the future. So a lot of things.
Right on. Well, I'm the exact June for me because it was summer and just June. I was away for the animation summit, so there was a lot of lines to be able to read. But let me tell you this: like, you start to calculate how much weight is in your backpack, and carrying around even like a very small book was just too much weight.
Yeah.
So, on top of everything else, right? Like a water bottle, maybe some snacks. I had my iPad, and even that was a very like. Normally, I'm much more protective of my iPad, but like I was like, I just need like the iPad itself, So, unfortunately, I didn't get to read as much. If anything, the thing that I did read, it's not really a book, but it's called Best Summed Up by Jeff Kanata, the ultimate limerick or film limerick quiz book. This was
5 lines.
Yeah, so each thing is 5 lines. It's
5 lines.
You guess what the movie is. This started off as kind of like a joke on the Filmcast podcast, and turned into an actual book. Now, the only sad part is it's no longer available because the publisher went out of business.
Oh, no.
Long story. Don't ask me. I don't know the thing. So apparently this is rarity. So I've got a very rare book.
Can I read it after you?
Yes, by all means. Like, the thing of it is, like, it's good for parties, right? Like, it's meant to be a fun thing, right?
Conversation starter.
Exactly. So that's what I've been up to. But okay, so we've got The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. That's Marisa's pick. That is for July of 2025. We've got directed by James Burrows. They call him Jimmy. That's in August of 2025. If you love, let's say, Will and Grace, if you love Friends, like if you're around our age, those will be the 2 ones. But he's directed like every iconic TV show he's been a part of in the sitcom space. Like, he's legendary. Yeah. And so we're getting a little bit away from fiction, but I figure it's a nice sort of respite, if you will.
Multicam sitcoms. Yeah.
And then for September, you want to introduce what we have? This is your pick.
Yeah. Honestly, another book that's been on my TBR forever, but when I was like looking up the summary, I was like, oh, how coincidental. And so we're going to be reading Extremely Loud, Incredibly Close by Stephen Daldry. It is a story about 9/11, and we're going to be reading it for the month of September. But this the story has been out for 20 years already, 20 plus years. So I was like, oh, and they have made a movie adaptation of it. So maybe I just got skewed where I was like, oh, this is recent. I was like, actually, no, it's been around for a while. It's just a book I have yet to get to, and let's read it. Let's just do it.
Okay. Well, I guess perhaps maybe in anticipation of that, taking a mental break, we've got Brida by Paulo Coelho, who's very famous for The Alchemist,
Alchemist.
right?
Yeah.
So this is, another novel of his. So if you read The Alchemist, this is kind of going to be similar, but it's about a young Irish girl. So, looking forward to it. I've read The Alchemist. I've read the other one that I'm blanking on the name, but looking forward to this one. Not October themed whatsoever, but maybe just a nice mental break from the September 11th type book.
I know I'm picking really heavy emotional ones. I don't know why I'm doing that to us. I'm sorry. You picked the colonizing ones. I picked the emotional human hard hitters.
All good.
It's
I'm
our
trying
balance.
to.
That's how we balance each other out.
Yes. So that's what we've got coming up. Thank you as always for taking the time to tune in. Again, as encouraged, please comment, please get in on the conversation with us. The conversation continues forever, right? We love seeing comments from books that we did, 3 years ago at this point. It's crazy. Yeah. Our quote unquote library. Of stuff we've done. So thank you, Marisa. It's always a pleasure. One more time, at Marisa Serafini, at Serafini
TV. And yeah, Phil, we both love reading books. We've read so many at this point. I do have to say, I am just such a big fan of this world. I have over 30 individual art pieces of both Legend of Korra and Avatar: The Last Airbender artwork just in my apartment alone. And I listened to the podcast. I was there from day one. Big fan of Janet Varney. You met her too. I think at that point you didn't realize who she was. I was like, oh my god, it's Korra. But no, I have met the cast. I really just do appreciate what they bring to this world, what they do for just bringing the philosophies and the understanding the themes, and just it's something that we all need to do. It's because we are all connected, and I love this world. It's a great place to be a part of. Avatar verse. Now I got to read the others. I know I'm getting to it. I promise. But also for those who are also big fans of the Avatar verse, and I'm sure look at the artwork, listen to the podcast, Braving the Elements, read the books, read the art books. There's just so much out there. It's great. Just really dive into it.
Absolutely. Well, that's it. That's what we have. So much appreciated. See you next time.